15 years, the damage that load shedding has brought to this economy has been incalculable.
The death toll from the recent floods in the South African province of KwaZulu-Natal has risen to 49.
After a fairly subdued night, the Knysna fires have begun to grow again.
We begin tonight with the nation already on edge in the coronavirus pandemic as protests turn violent.
London's burning and no one seems able to bring it under control.
You're listening to Off-Grid Survival, South Africa's first prepper podcast. And we are your hosts, Brett and Ben.
Good morning, Brett. How are you?
Morning, Ben. Welcome to episode 13.
It's wonderful being here, and we have a new setup. So
we've got new equipment.
Yeah, headphones and all that type of thing, which is weird.
Real microphones, dude. This thing is huge compared to what we've been using previously. So I'm pretty sure our audio quality is going to improve drastically, and I hope the audience enjoys it.
It'll be interesting to see if we sound better now or not.
Well, I now know what I sound like to other people because I'm wearing headphones and I sound weird.
I sound weird to myself as well.
Anyway, we have a correction from somebody that listened to our show on hygiene and sanitation. Well, not a correction, but just some additional information with regard to dry shampoo. The aerosolized dry shampoo that you get in the shops can leave your hair sticky if you use it for extended periods of time. And what actually works really well is corn flour, cornstarch. It absorbs the moisture, it takes out all the oils, and you literally brush it in, brush it out. And then if you've got dark hair and you're worried about it making your hair look grey because it is a white powder, apparently you can use cocoa powder.
That'll smell interesting.
You'll smell really good and you might have people wanting to eat you, but I think that's some really good points. And yeah, obviously cocoa powder, because it's a darker colour, it's going to not show up in your hairs, obviously. But yeah, thank you very much for sending us that feedback.
Yes, thank you very much.
Then, episode 13, we're going to delve a little bit into the subject of climate change and extreme weather scenarios that are affecting the world at the moment. This weekend, as we're recording, has been quite a hectic week with regard to weather in South Africa. The N3 highway, Van Riene's Pass toll road, has been closed with hundreds of people stuck. Due to extreme snow, unseasonable snow.
Yes.
Which is why we refer to it as climate change, I suppose, because things are changing because it's unseasonable. And I was watching some videos on YouTube of people, and on Facebook, of people that have been stuck there. And there was a drone shot where the queue of cars and trucks was probably about 2 or 3 kilometers long, of people stuck in the pass.
Yes.
And they couldn't get to the nearest town. People have been evacuated. At this point, from what I understand, roads have been cleared. In South Africa, we don't have the infrastructure that they do in the States, or in Canada, for instance, or even Europe, where they've got these salting trucks with snow plow on the front that literally drive all the roads.
Yes.
Because we don't get that weather. We generally don't get those extremes of weather.
Yeah, if you want to see snow here, you got to visit tops of mountains and stuff.
Yeah. The last time I remember hearing about a pass in the Drakensberg being closed from snow, I was still in school. So we're talking 20 plus years ago.
Well, we had that one year that snowed on top of Table Mountain in the summer.
Yeah, that's just a freak event.
Long time ago.
Yeah, I've seen photos of the top of Table Mountain with the mountain club huts covered in snow and that sort of thing. I haven't experienced it myself. I've experienced snow, as we've talked about before. But yeah, so a lot of comments are coming through on social media about, especially on the South African preparedness pages, on how unprepared these people have been. And I think what a lot of people are forgetting is that the people that were driving from Joburg to Durban on the N3 for the school holidays were going on their summer holidays or spring-summer holidays.
Yes.
So they would generally have been wearing lighter clothes, taking bathing costumes.
Yeah.
They're not going to be having down jackets and that sort of thing in their car. So I don't know. Half my mind is saying it's a toll road, which means that they should have closed the road earlier. They shouldn't have let people get into that extreme. The other side of me goes, well, if you're taking a long drive, many hours, you should be prepared.
Yeah.
You know, what equipment do you carry in your car, and where do we go from there?
One of the things to, I don't know, give people the benefit of the doubt is, on the toll road side of things, is we aren't jacked for snow on a toll road to that closes. So any command to close the toll road would have to come from higher ups, and we don't have the infrastructure to expedite those instructions. So somebody's not going to take the initiative at the gate to slow things down and possibly be in trouble, especially if they're not, because the toll gate is not at Van Reenen.
Yes.
So where they are, it's probably a little bit rainy or something. And by the time they know something's happened and the grootbaas suddenly start jumping up and down, there's enough cars stuck on that road.
It's taken too long,
Because it's a major, especially with the weekend, it's a lot of cars on their way down to a almost tropical climate, a subtropical climate down in Durban.
Durban's normally hot and steamy, not cold and damp.
Yes. And that comes also to the point regardless of where you fall on climate change, whether you believe in the aliens are doing it, or we're doing it to ourselves, or it's just a natural phenomena.
Natural cycle,
The weather is changing.
Definitely.
To a lesser or greater degree, depending on where you are in the world. And it comes down to what are your plans to future-proof yourself against that. Because you might be driving down to wherever you're going to go on holiday and you have a flood. And I imagine if you were in Durban when those floods happened, you wouldn't have the problem of the snow, you'd have the other problems.
Problem of the floods,
And so if you're going down as a family of 4, or a family of 2 or 6 or however many people in the car, your first aid kit doesn't have enough solar blankets or emergency blankets for everyone that's in the car. Because what if you went off the road? It's the middle of the night. It's not massively cold, but you're going to be spending the night. There's not enough cars around you wherever you're going. And you, especially the N3, there's quite a few places stop to fill up. Now, you leave Joburg, you start driving down, you didn't really think about filling up. Now you drive and you get stuck in this Van Reenen's Pass, and you have less than a quarter tank of fuel left because you were planning on putting fuel in the next place you could. And now you have to idle your car through the night. How long do you think that fuel's going to last?
No, not very long at all.
So we need to get into a mindset that we're not scared of the future, scared of things happening, but plan for the eventuality.
Plan for eventualities. And if you're going on a long distance trip, do you take a car kit with you? Have you got a specialized kit that you keep in your car for emergencies every day? With a longer trip like that, are you carrying spare fuel? Do you have any kind of emergency signaling device? Maybe a strobe light or one of those traffic triangles that you can put out if you've broken down. Something like that on the roof of your car will at least let other vehicles know, hopefully, that something is amiss, and they could, if they can slow down, will slow down, and so that you don't end up having a multi-car pileup.
Even having your own headlight, or even on the lower setting, the things last for hours, and that makes a difference. You need to plan these things ahead of time. If you're not carrying those type of things on you as an EDC, at least have something in your car that is under a back seat or something, so packed away so you can access it when you need to, and people aren't going to take it out of your car when you're not looking.
One of the comments I saw, people were complaining that there was nowhere to go to the loo and that they didn't have toilet paper. So having something as simple as a roll of toilet paper in your car
make a difference.
Will make a huge difference,
And in a roll of toilet paper, people think, okay, I don't need it. You can blow your nose with the roll of toilet paper, not the whole roll. So you can obviously deal with necessities outside the car, but just cleaning your windshield of not Varsum, what is it, condensation. It works. So it's got a lot of uses. You can clean your hand if you're changing a tire. There's lots you can use a toilet roll for, and if you really want to go fancy, you get yourself a nice round Tupperware that's with a clip-on lid that the toilet roll can fit into, and then it won't get dirty.
Okay. I didn't think of that.
I've got pockets behind my seat, so what I do is take a toilet roll, smush it flat, and then stick it in that pocket behind the seat. It can't roll away.
Like when we go hiking, we actually take the core of the toilet roll out, so you don't have that hard core. And it flattens out nicely,
Now, when I go hiking, I leave it in. I squash it flat, but then it also, when you open it, fits nicely on the back of your spade because you don't want it lying on the ground. You want it...
True. And then you've already mentioned first aid kit with spare Mylar blankets in it. Food and water. Now, normally when we go on a road trip, we've got snacks and that sort of thing. But when you're going from your house to holiday accommodation, you generally don't take a lot of food with you. You'll either buy food at the resort or house where you're going to be, or place where you're staying, unless you're a camper taking food with you because you're going into the bush. How many people actually carry spare food in their car? Generally, people with kids, any food in your car is going to get eaten if the kids know about it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and also if you're taking water, they like to drink the water now.
Yes.
So having water in your boot, a 5 litre or something, even if it's tap water, something that you can access in emergency, but you can use it for your radiator, to fill up your washing liquid or for your windscreen. There's a lot of things you can use it for, but this is not the water that you've bought for your kids and your wife and yourself when you're driving. This is the extra water.
Yes.
Same with the food. You have all the snacks you want to buy for driving down, but if you've got a go bag or something in your car, having a jar of peanut butter in will
Well,
lighten
this is
the
where
mood.
having something like homemade MREs comes in handy. Because the ones I made have got a fireless heater in them, so you just add water and it actually heats up the food. Then I've got a breakfast and some snacks for lunch. So there's 3 meals in it. It weighs 500 grams in total. 2 or 3 of those in the car, and you've got enough food for 2 of us to last us a couple of days if necessary.
Yes.
Not going to go hungry, but it's not going to be a huge amount of food, but it'll be enough to keep us going.
Well, that's where my go bag, I've got my hiking setup, with the burner gas thing. So I can make coffee, which is important. I have some sachets of coffee and tea. And I normally got 3 tins of bully beef. So I'm sorted for 3 days at a push for the food. Obviously not for the whole family, just like 2 people. 1 person comfortably for 3 days.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's simple things, thinking ahead makes your life easier when things go wrong.
And the stuff doesn't take up a huge amount of space in your car.
Yes.
I've got a small car, but it's got about 220 litre boot. But I have still got enough space in there that a small pouch with emergency supplies will not take up a huge amount of space. Yeah. It can fit on the side of the wheel well or something like that.
Under, do your back seats fold down?
Yes.
The seating part of it, is there space underneath that?
I actually haven't checked.
Because I've found that, like with tire puncture repair kits, I got a Fortuna, the seats fold all the way forward.
Yes.
And I can fit an axe, puncture repair kits, all that type of stuff under the actual seats.
Okay.
So when they're in the normal position, it's hidden away. They're not in the way of anything.
I must go check that with my car. I haven't checked that.
Because, like I said, the irritation is you plan the stuff in your car. And when you're looking for it, it's been taken inside because some helpful soul decided to help you carry stuff into the house. And they've taken the stuff that you've got in the car, but suddenly it's not in the car anymore. So even jumper leads, tow ropes, if you have spaces to store it, or a bag specifically that looks like it's supposed to be in the car, and people will leave it there.
Yeah. And then also there's the spare wheel well. Yes. So there's normally quite a bit of space in there, depending on if you've got... Well, some cars don't even have spare wheels nowadays.
Yeah.
But if you do still have a spare wheel, there's always room to pack stuff around in there as well. Especially if you've made smaller ration packs, they can fit quite nicely in there, or a little Esprit stove or something like that for heating water.
Yeah. With stuff nowadays, you get cigarette lighter, kettles, and all that type of stuff.
I've seen those.
Test them first before deciding to have them in the future, because sometimes they draw too much, and they take out your fuses in your vehicle.
Okay. Yeah.
So some vehicles have a higher amperage output plug that's not specifically a cigarette lighter plug. But do your testing, make sure that you have spare fuses for that eventuality.
Yeah. And then something as simple as power banks for your phones.
Yes.
You're going to be wanting to stay in contact with people. And the worst thing that can happen is that now you've run out of fuel, the car's dead, your battery's dead because of the cold, and your phone dies. Yeah. Now, how do you keep in contact with family or emergency services? I know there was apparently a WhatsApp group set up. People were sending pins through where they were stuck on the pass.
Okay.
So that when emergency services eventually did get to them, I believe the army was called out.
Okay.
To start evacuating people. They knew where to look.
Yes.
So obviously that road has got very good cell signal. Otherwise, people wouldn't be able to send a pin. If you're in the middle of the bush, quite often you can't even do that. So, but having electricity or having power for your phone and keeping your phone powered is important.
Yes. Yeah, it is an important thing. And like the guy said, if you have, say you don't have a power bank and you're far away from a way to charge your phone, and you're going to lose battery power, oftentimes they say what you do is record an answering message.
A voice note, yeah.
A voice note, but it's more for your message service, like if somebody can't contact you. And you actually record that with your last available.
I've heard that, yeah.
Because it doesn't rely on your phone having connection.
Yeah, because your phone can actually go dead, and then that's still recorded onto the server.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't make myself very clear.
What's the word we're looking for? An answering machine message.
Yes. We've lost a lot of words since the invent of instant messaging.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, so a lot of things have changed in our terminology. We're talking about messaging service. It's made life a lot easier being in communication, because if we had this problem on the N3 back in the day, when we were young, makes us sound so old.
Oh, before cell phones.
Yeah. You could make a call when you left home, and you made a call when you arrived wherever you arrived.
That's it.
And in between, there was just nothing.
Yeah.
And we used to use radios in the Transkei, CB radio, like a cell phone. So my dad had one in his vehicle and we had one at home. So we were kind of used to being able to contact. But nowadays, it's made life so easy.
I remember as a kid traveling around the country when we went on holiday, you'd get those yellow things sticking out of the side of the road, the SOS phones.
Okay.
So if you broke down, they were every 5 kilometers. You would walk 5 kilometers to try and find one of these things, and then you'd be able to get hold of emergency services.
Yeah.
You don't see those on the roads at all anymore because cell phones.
Yeah.
Because everybody is carrying their comms with them now.
And also, being South Africa, those things probably end up in the scrap heap.
Probably. But with regard to like changing climate, as we started discussing in the beginning, we've seen some pretty extreme weather this year in South Africa. This late snowfall, we're mid-September now. We had some extreme flooding in the Western Cape earlier in the year. I know Cape Town has always been referred to as the Cape of Storms, but it's starting to live up to that name more than usual lately.
Yeah.
We've had some flooding here on the Garden Route, windstorms in the Karoo that knocked down power lines, flooding in KZN, tornadoes. So things are getting stranger.
Spicy.
And spicy is a good way of putting it, yeah. And are we adjusting our preps to the weather, or are we just carrying on same old, same old?
Well, a lot of people are carrying on how South Africa was. And yeah, that's one of the things we have to look at is also how does what we can harvest change? If we're in a place that we get deciduous fruit and it doesn't support it anymore.
Yeah.
Do we swap? If you go into the bush and it normally flowers on whatever plant, we haven't got to that stage in our, in our prep yet. But if that has changed, that the Tsitsikamma area doesn't get those flowers at that time of the year anymore, or that fruit at that time, or if snakes come out of hibernation later, your idea of getting snakes for a meal goes away.
Just something as simple as birds, for hunting birds, or look, rodents are always there, but yeah. How are we, what are we prepping for? Are we going to start prepping? Do we need to start prepping for colder weather? Do we start prepping for warmer weather? It all depends on where you're staying. So for us here on the Garden Route has always been a damper place. It's got rainfall all year round.
Yeah, but a few years ago we had they called it a green drought. Everything was green, but there was no water.
But there was no rain, yeah.
There was just barely enough rain to keep stuff green. So that there was a water shortage.
Yeah. Cape Town, what's going on 7 years ago now, had a drought for 2 years where the dams were literally empty.
Yeah.
So a lot of this has got to do with the number of people moving into the area and that sort of thing, and the amount of usage. But we're looking at shortages as well as extremes in weather.
Yes.
So how many preppers in South Africa actually micro homestead, and that they are already growing their own veggies and that sort of thing?
Like vertical farming type of.
You get the vertical farm, but just having a little veggie patch in your garden.
Yes.
Are you growing tomatoes or carrots or spinach or cabbage or whatever? We're not talking full-on homesteading where you're going to be feeding your entire family off what you grow, but supplementing your meals with stuff that you have grown. Firstly, it saves you money, and secondly, are those veggies that you're growing changing because the seasons are changing?
Like you said, as the seasons change, we plant different things. But if those seasons are changing, now if you're supposed to plant broccoli 3 weeks after the first whatever, I'm not a gardener, so say for argument's sake, you have to plant broccoli 3 weeks after the first frost or something.
Yeah.
If your frost changes, does your point of planting change as well? Your timing.
So part of my job, I'm involved with the coffee industry, and coffee beans, for instance, are very susceptible to extremes in weather. And I'm sure people have noticed that the price of coffee has gone through the roof lately.
Yeah.
And that's due to extremes in weather. So heavy frosts in countries like Brazil and Colombia, and then typhoons, unseasonal typhoons in Vietnam have knocked out entire plantations. And when that starts to affect our everyday preps, not our luxury preps like coffee, then we need to start really taking note.
Yeah, I agree. We have to change the way what we think of as a food source. In the Americas, they do alligator, rat, possum, frogs, things that we don't really consider food. Well, that our palates aren't used to. So we'd have to find out, can we eat frogs in South Africa? I mean, and which frogs? Are the bullfrogs, or because what we see as, our frogs don't look the same. Okay. So we're a bullfrog or toad, or I don't even know the difference between them, but it's a big thing.
Yes.
I'm holding my hand like a small watermelon. It's a big frog.
Yeah.
Are those edible? And if they're not edible, why? And if they are edible, what parts are edible? I'm used to growing up around the sea, so I know what to eat in the sea.
But even then, as our climate starts to change and we get either warmer or colder weather, whichever way it's going to go, will mussels be growing all year round, or will the water get too cold for them and now all of a sudden you don't get mussels anymore? There goes an entire food source.
Yes.
Already we're seeing things with fish where fish aren't coming into certain areas because the water is colder or the current has changed.
Yeah, you get different types of fish for cold water, and you get other fish that like hot water. Yeah. So we need to look at if the water gets colder or if it gets hotter, the different fish change.
And the same goes for freshwater. So maybe you've got a pond at home where you've got tilapias or something like that, that you breeding as a prep, that you can go and fish them out, and you've got some sustainable food source there. And now all of a sudden, because the temperature's dropped and it's a lower year-round temperature, those fish aren't breeding as much.
Yeah.
But then not only with food, but with shelter. How do we prepare our homes for different weather? South Africa has got such a especially on the coastal regions, we have such a temperate climate that we don't have double glazing on our windows.
Yeah.
We don't have underfloor heating. At the most, some houses will have insulation in the roof. Our houses are predominantly brick in South Africa, brick or cinder block. Very few are wood-clad houses like they do in the States, where they've got severe insulation between the layers. Our houses are facing in certain directions to get the sun. So how will changing weather patterns affect how we build, and as preppers, how we store our food, where we store our food, and if we're planning on bugging in, how we secure our houses for extremes of weather.
Yeah. Well, in South Africa, like Sutherland, we get into the minus degrees Celsius.
Yes.
Well into the minus.
Bethlehem, Joburg, even.
Yeah. They don't do double glazing. They just tough it out, And in your Karoo, where it gets really hot in summer and really cold in winter, they just go thicker walls, larger porches, and the one thing I've seen, their porches are actually under the ground are water tanks.
Okay.
And so that helps keep the floor cold in summer, and obviously keeps it warmer in winter because it's so underground it retains heat.
That's a good idea.
So, but yeah, I've never seen a lot of these places, like up in the Northern Cape, Springbok area, where it's so hot it melts your shoes if you want to walk in summer during their siesta time. They don't have air cons. They don't have any of that type of stuff, you know. And when it gets really cold, they don't, again, have underfloor heating.
Yep.
Obviously, the modern stuff, the guys have changed their way of doing. But if we start getting
Longer winters and that sort of thing.
every year, then our mindset has to change. And then a lot of South Africans aren't as tough as the old boys that used to walk to school in fellies or barefoot or, you know.
Yeah.
We get all those stories constantly.
So, yeah, like you're saying, what will we use to stay warm? We're not double glazing our windows. We're not putting severe insulation in. Do we now all go and buy gas heaters and start stockpiling bottles of gas?
Till it runs out.
Do we just make sure that we got some nice warm blankies in the cupboard?
And what constitutes warm blankies? You know, do we go the fleecy type things, or proper wool, or cotton? Or...
So these are all things that we need to look at. And I know normally with our show we try and give answers to questions. We're throwing out a lot more questions and answers today because this is a thought experiment. It's what do we do in extremes? We don't have coal-burning stoves like they do in Europe. Some people have stoves.
I can burn anthracite in mine.
But the majority of houses don't have that. That's
Well, in the
more
Karoo,
an exception to the rule.
The guys in the Karoo generally have coal-burning stoves that they keep alight most of the year round.
Yeah. Well, look, I know growing up in Cape Town, in the city bowl there, you were not allowed to make fires. You weren't even allowed to braai because the shape of the mountain, the smoke would literally hang in the city. So they had a fire ban.
I don't live there. Neither do you anymore.
No, anymore, yes. And I do notice here on the garden route that it took me a while to get used to, that people do have a lot more fireplaces in their houses as a way of staying warm. But then that brings the question from a prepping point of view, how sustainable is that? How much anthracite or coal can you store at your house? And how long will that last you? Will it last you a season? Will it last you 5 seasons?
Well, for me, if I buy, I'm still using anthracite that I bought 2 years ago. And because my stove is not built for it, what I do, I use wood.
Okay.
And so I pack the anthracite in and it burns, but I'd have to just maintain a little bit of wood in it over time. So it can burn for hours and hours and hours on like a single piece of wood.
Okay.
Because it's just enough to keep the heat up that the anthracite will burn. Because the anthracite actually wants an insulated firebox so that it holds heat there and then it carries on burning and you just add on top and the ash falls out the bottom. So it normally go to like a rocker table or something to agitate it. And it does make it cheaper. Anthracite, in South Africa, our coal is anthracite, so it's like basically the highest quality coal. It's not cheap. The last time I bought, I think it was about 700 Rand for a 50 kg bag, you know, like a strip sack type of bag. And it does make it nice that you don't have to go out and collect wood all the time. If you're in the Karoo, you'll be buying anthracite, but you also get all the thorn trees that get cleared or washed down from flash floods, and you keep those and cut those up as well.
So the point I was trying to get to as well was that look at any of the informal settlements around South Africa.
Yeah.
How many trees do you see? Very few.
Not many, and especially in South Africa where we're trying to wipe out the wattle, which is the fastest growing wood source.
These guys are going out daily and chopping wood down, where they're denuding entire areas of wood.
Natural forests,
Well, natural and alien vegetation, because they don't discriminate. They just want to keep warm or cook on or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And in a full grid down situation where we've got to a point where the climate, I'm not talking day after tomorrow kind of, extremes, but where it is getting colder for longer and wetter for longer, staying warm and cooking is going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Especially with the size population that we've got.
Yeah. Well,
and people are going to be fighting for resources.
South Africa is going to have to get to a point where we start thinking more like the Northern Hemisphere. because the northern hemisphere is very much like the ant that puts, the story, the ant that puts away for winter, and we've been more like the grasshopper that doesn't care. And because we have a more temperate climate, we don't have to plan for winter the same as the northern hemisphere. All the northern hemisphere countries, they have a summertime that they can do whatever they want to prep for a winter time. And then winter is stay in place and survive.
Yeah, hunker down.
Yeah.
So we haven't got to that extreme in South Africa yet, but if this past weekend is anything to go by with Van Reenen's Pass, it's something that we should maybe start thinking about. Look, I know the guys further south, like in Cape Town and stuff, the odds of there ever being snow in Cape Town itself are very slim, but it still gets bitterly cold. When you've got that wind coming off the Arctic Ocean, or Antarctic Ocean, should I say, that wind chill factor drops temperature very quickly. And anybody that's been hiking on Table Mountain can tell you how quickly the weather can change in Cape Town.
And if you look at all the movies, South Africans and Southern Hemisphere residents, I think they lulled into a false sense of security because all the movies you watch are all these extreme things happening in the north first. The aliens attack there first, the weather attacks there first.
That's because they got all the landmarks.
It gets hot, cold, meteors, everything happens in the northern hemisphere first. And so in our minds, maybe subconsciously, we'll know ahead of time. But what happens if it reverses? What happens if it happens in the south first? Now you can say, well, maybe we're being too fatalistic or too conspiracy theorist type thing, but it is happening in our area, whether it's happened in the north first or not. And we got to be able to roll with the punches. And the northern hemisphere, because of their past and the countries having all those experiences, they're a lot more able to adapt very quickly, our saying is, boeremaak plan, but we suddenly have, like Texas had, where the whole of Texas froze.
An extreme weather event,
I mean, imagine the pipes that we'd have had to replace in South Africa, because they would burst in our walls.
This house that we're renting currently, the pipes are on the outside of the house.
Yeah.
So, look, where we are here, the odds of getting a massive freeze are not that great. But I had frost on my car 3 times this year in winter. I have never seen that before.
And our water doesn't freeze in the pipes. At the moment, if your pipes on the outside, you have a greater chance of them being stolen than frozen. But if we had a freeze like Texas, we would have a standstill we wouldn't have enough plumbing in South Africa
to replace it,
Well, maybe South Africa, but in this whole area. And so we need to change the way we think about things and the preps we do. And funny enough, I was looking at a nice down sleeping bag at Kway.
Okay.
It was on special, dropped from 5 to 3. And I was
1,000 or 100?
5,000 to 3,000.
Yeah.
But I was told that by somebody close to me that I don't go camping in such cold weather. I'm like, I have, and they aren't somebody that can make that comment because they get cold easily.
Yeah.
And I've been cold enough that down sleeping bag would be nice. And just on that tangent was, if you go hiking and you go camping and you've experienced cold and you know what it's like and you've equipped yourself for it, you're in a better position to handle extreme changes in climate, especially ones that happen suddenly, than people who don't even own a sleeping bag. Because you can get under your duvet in your sleeping bag, and you keep a lot warmer, especially if it's a his and hers left and right type thing, where you double up. You can get nice and toasty. But if you're not one of those people that camp or hike or anything like that, you aren't used to it. And we did a cleanup with this Revive Nizer thing, was it yesterday? And cleaning up the debris and trash around, you come across a lot of the blankets of guys that don't have houses. So they store their little blanket in a bush somewhere, and noticing how many of the blankets were discarded and they are completely drenched because we've been having rain for the last little bit.
Yeah.
These guys, they only have the Pep store, like dog blanket up blankets to keep warm. and those are wet. So imagine how difficult it is for them that don't have anything.
Yeah.
It's quite a thing, We need a plan for ourselves, obviously, and for those that we care about around us. And a person could make the argument that you could plan too much, it'll cost too much. Or you being a doomsday person, and you think the world's going to end and the aliens are going to attack.
Only if we're lucky. Oh, how cool would it be if the aliens actually attacked, dude?
I don't know. Aliens coming to visit would be better than the aliens attacking.
Either way, it'd be fun.
And, in South Africa, if the aliens did attack or visit, how long do you think before their wheels are gone and they're standing on bricks?
District 9. But yes, that's another tangent we can go on.
Yeah. So when we're talking about extreme weathers, either which way it goes, a person needs to decide. Let's take hiking. So you're busy hiking, you checked your map, you checked your weather, and everything looks awesome, and you're hiking, and some weird freak storm comes through. As a survival side of things, do you, what they call a shelter in place, or do you gap it? And what are the benefits? Like you and Walter went through that experience.
Yeah.
You guys sheltered, and then saw that this is not getting any better, and then you gapped it.
Yeah.
So
you got to make a judgment call, basically.
Getting enough knowledge that you can make that judgment call safely or efficiently is important.
Yeah.
It's like we've done camping and it has seriously rained. And I was actually chatting to somebody about, I've watched one with Bear Grylls, one of these episodes, and they were doing climbing up a waterfall, how you do it. And next minute he turns around and goes, "Is that waterfall running faster?" And he's, "Nah, guys, we need to get out of here." And then you see how they're not worried about the filming side of things. They're passing the camera between the cameraman and him, and they're climbing up the side of the gorge. By the time they get to the top, this water is flowing. Now, as experienced as he is, he almost got caught by a flash flood.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of experience that goes into keeping yourself safe, whether you're camping or you hiking. And that is extreme weather, or not on like a national scale, but on your micro
Localized,
scale. Yeah. And if you can apply wisdom to a scenario, you can start thinking about keeping yourself and your family and your friends and your community safer in a grander scale.
Yeah, so I think what that comes down to is that part of prepping is learning. And the only way we're going to learn is if we actually practice what we preach. So are we doing first aid courses? Are we going camping and taking our gear with us and seeing how that tent performs in rainy conditions? Is it a summer tent only? And it leaks like a sieve because now it's raining and you need, okay, cool, I need to adjust my prep to get a shelter that is going to be more waterproof.
Yes.
Okay. Going to extreme weather conditions where it's getting colder, we're going to be consuming more calories.
Yeah.
So what food are we storing? How is the food that we got, how long is it going to last? Now that the weather's maybe getting colder, we're using more calories to stay warm. Now, going from a 3-month supply of food, all of a sudden we've only got a 2-month supply of food.
Yeah.
So we need to now adjust our preps accordingly.
And also gaining knowledge. If you want to keep warm, actually take a look at the people that don't have houses, the homeless people. What do they do to keep warm? I mean, I've seen the guys, they shove newspapers under their clothing. The guys use Vaseline on their skin, whether it helps or don't help, they block their pores so that there's a lot of different ways guys try and overcome cold and other ways to overcome heat. And the more experience you have with that, the more information you have to draw from. A lot of us think that the only way to keep warm is to have a down jacket from that brand or this brand. It needs to be brand name. And it's natural. If I see you all warm and cozy in your KOA down jacket, in my mind, I'm like, it's got to be a KOA down jacket. But if it says Nike on it, then my brain says, no, it's got to be a Nike down jacket, The best way is choose something. If you're getting a waterproof, now we were talking to Walter and he mentioned some waterproofs, like the cheap ones you can buy or from Agri or something like that. They literally, it's plastic.
Yeah.
They will keep you dry till you sweat on the inside and you get wet.
Yeah.
From the inside, not through. But the best way to test anything, if you're getting a waterproof jacket, the most expensive one, the cheapest one. Next time it is soaking outside, put on your gumboots, put on your waterproof, and go jump in puddles, okay? And see where the failure point is, okay?
Test your gear.
You might have a $5,000 jacket and they designed a stupid little clip somewhere that leaks water down your back. And it might sound obvious, but I had to figure this out myself. If you have a hood on, put your hood on. Because if it's raining and your hood's down, it's a bucket. Ask me how I know.
I would have loved to have been there when that happened.
It's very cold.
Yes.
But when you're testing these things in a scenario where it's controlled, the most that will ever happen is you'll get wet, or you'll get hot, or you'll get sunburned, or you'll get whatever. But use it in a controlled environment, and then you can always head inside and recover.
Well, on that exact note, I remember going hiking. Now, I never had a rain suit. I always had a poncho. It went over me and it went over my bag. And I was hiking on Table Mountain. It was bucketing down.
Yes.
But being Cape Town, the wind was pumping as well. When you're hiking up a ravine and the wind is coming from behind you, the rain is now going uphill. A poncho is open at the bottom.
Yes.
So I was still soaked under my lovely waterproof poncho just because I had the wrong equipment for the wrong environment.
Yes. Well, okay. I bought a poncho from a army surplus store because it's army. It works, obviously.
In theory.
The first time I used the poncho, I don't think the rain slowed down on the way through the poncho. This thing was far from waterproof.
Yeah.
So test your gear before you find out.
And the same goes for vehicles. How many guys who own 4x4s have got all this fancy equipment bolted onto the sides and the back and in the boot? They've maybe got a snatch strap or something, and they've never used it. They've never been on a 4x4 course. And now they get themselves into a situation where the vehicle is stuck and they've got to get the vehicle out, but they don't know how to connect it to the car.
Yeah. Or how many people buy a nice brand new, a brightly colored Suzuki Espresso and have never taken the the jack out?
I have taken the jack out.
And actually seen that it works.
It does work.
Or where you connect it to. Or, so in your driveway, while it's dry and warm, figure out how it works. I'm just making an inside joke with Brett, but it's
a good point.
Figure out how it works, because I've had to figure out how one of these slinger arm work on to get the spare tire down from the below a bucky.
Oh, that's the worst.
In the sousing rain, so you're getting more dirty from the splashing of the water splashing up than you're actually getting wet from the...
Well, that exact thing happened to me when I used to be a rep. I was actually coming up to the garden route and I had a blowout. Luckily, it was a rear wheel on a bucky.
Yes.
I didn't know where the spare wheel was. Now I'm in the middle of nowhere on the N2 in the bucketing rain, and I had to, as you said, figure out how to undo that bolt that holds the spare wheel in place. I was drenched by the time I got to Mossel Bay.
Yeah, and a lot of things have their special way of doing it. You know, like Isuzu single cab, behind the front seat, you lean the bench seat forward, and it's got that long slinger arm that you go in. There's a special hole, and you let the thing down.
I had no idea about that.
But now you in your mind, you know that. So you get there and you look for it and you can't find anything, and eventually find this funny short little spanner of the vehicle, and it happens to be like a SUV style. And you look for everything to try and let your spare tire down, and all you do is you find a funny little bolt under the back carpet, like a hex bolt head or something, and you have to put it on there and wind the thing down. There's so many different designs out there. Everybody's thinking their thing works better. Some have a chain that drops the back tire. Some of them are on a bracket that falls down. And if you've got some strength behind your shoulders and your arms, you find less problems on certain things. But especially if you've never done it before, if you're a lady listening to this and you drive a whatever vehicle, see if you can loosen the wheel of the bolts, the wheel nuts or the studs in your vehicle, whatever you're driving. Because if you cannot change your own tire, look at buying a power bar. So instead of having a shorter spanner, you go get a nice power bar that you can actually loosen your tire or loosen your spare wheel. The reason being, more often than not, you'll have a good Samaritan that'll help you. But if you don't have something, if you have a medical issue that you can't, like somebody sitting very close to me can't lift anything heavy type of thing, and if he has to suddenly change a tire, he can either do himself an injury, which will set him back. He can wait for somebody to come and help him, or he has to have a way to do it that works. Now, if this was a permanent condition, Brett would have to look for possibly one of these handheld
ratchet things.
Yeah, it's a what's it called, impact driver, battery-powered impact driver. So you can undo your wheel nuts without having to muscle it.
Yeah.
And if you a lady that doesn't have a large amount of upper body strength, you can do the same thing. If you're an older person, same problem, you can do the same thing. But it requires you to try it, see where you fail, and then change the way you do it while you're in a safe environment. Because invariably these things happen when the weather's nasty and you're in a rush, or you're in a place where it's not safe to spend too much time changing a tire.
Or, as we were talking about in the beginning, it's an extreme weather condition.
Yes.
And like you said just now, you snowed in, you flooded in, and you don't want to have to be learning in bad conditions.
Yeah, learning by doing is great, preferably in a controlled environment.
Yeah.
When it's in an extreme environment or a life-threatening environment, it's not comfortable learning.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
A few times.
A few times.
Yeah. So I think this being an extreme weather challenge, I think we've covered a lot and extra.
Yeah, we definitely went on a couple of tangents, but I think it was all good information. So.
Yeah. And anybody listening, if you've got other advice for us or questions, even if we don't know, we'll find out and we'll visit this topic at a later point.
And please, guys, comment on our social media pages, Instagram, Facebook, even on Spotify. You can leave comments now. Been a bit of a drought on comments lately. But yeah, please, come pop on, say hi, and let us know what you think.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, we'll bring episode 13 to a close. Ben, awesome seeing you as usual.
Well, it was great seeing you, and maybe we should have a closing comment of practice your prep.
Definitely.
Yeah. And we'll leave it at that. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Off-Grid Survival. For more info and updates, feel free to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Off-Grid Survival ZA. That's it for now. We will see you next time, and always remember, be prepared. Off-Grid Survival is a member of the South African Podcasters Guild. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and may not reflect OGS Media or the Guild's views. We aim for accuracy but cannot guarantee it. Please verify information independently. Consult professionals before acting on any advice given during these episodes. By listening, you acknowledge that we are not responsible for any damages resulting from reliance on our content. All content is provided without warranty.